Welcome to another North-South podcast. And yeah, we're doing things a bit differently this time. It definitely is a podcast, no video feeds. And yeah, we are one co-host down today, with Alistair not being available, unfortunately being called away for work. But we're still very happy to have Ben Karpinski on to talk sport with us. We haven't been able to talk sport for quite a while. It's been quite political based, so it's always nice to have a bit of a change up. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Ben.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Darren.
And yeah, if people don't know who you are, can you just maybe give them a brief little bio of yourself?
Well, my name is Ben Karpinski. I started a Twitter account back in 2010 called @FollowTheBounce, and my dream was to just not have a shitty job, but more just to create sporting content and see how far I could take it. And yeah, the last sort of 8-9 years have been pretty good. I work on the Gareth Cliff Show on Cliff Central. I do the sport there, so that's my podcasting base. I've been podcasting for probably about 6 years now. But predominantly I was a writer. Wrote for magazines, and I started a blog called thebounce.co.za. And from there, I've just been a sports guy, I guess. Nothing more, nothing less. I was never a journalist. I was never formally trained. I was never really cut out for like a real serious desk job either. So I kind of found myself somewhere in the middle, to the right, to the left. I don't know. But yeah, I create sporting content essentially, and I've been passionately doing it since that time, 2010, like I said. And yeah, going from strength to strength. I've just actually opened a sporting creative agency to kind of formalize what I do with some business partners. And now I make a lot of videos. So maybe it's just as well, this is just a podcast, not a video, because come Sunday, I look so bedraggled. I'm also pretty hungover today. So I'm actually happy my camera's not working.
Well, yeah, that worked out pretty well for yourself. And then, yeah, just when you did start that Twitter account and that, like, what made you start that? Like, what got you into start thinking that this is what I want to do and this is going to work, kind of thing?
Well, it was actually a strange time in my life. I think I was breaking up from a toxic relationship that I was on and again, off again with. So I was putting very much my time into my work. And Twitter was like this new thing. I didn't understand it. I just thought it was crap. I thought it was so lame. And, Facebook was the only thing that was essentially social media. Bear in mind, not so long before that, people were migrating from MySpace to Facebook. So the fact that anything else could ever live was quite something. And it was at the time where I kind of quit the corporate world, and I wanted to kind of make it as a sports writer. Back then, I didn't know what that was. I actually thought maybe if I could just work for a magazine for the rest of my life, I could be one of those guys. Saying that now makes me laugh. But yeah, it was just one of those things. I was working at an advertising agency. It was the 22 World Cups ago.
2010.
Sorry, a Cricket World Cup. So that would be, the 2011 Cricket World Cup. I started live tweeting matches, and on the back of that, of just calling it the way we would call it amongst friends, I started building a bit of a following, and it was just such a cool medium in that it was so instant. Like, you could have the live feed in front of you, and then you would have the commentary. People always said commentary is very dull and cliched. So here I was trying to kind of prove that there was another way of enjoying sports. And with that came that sort of so-called second, third screen kind of thing. And just, I was just fortunate that my timing was I was one of the first people kind of doing that. And on the basis of that, I was also writing a lot for my blog. So the two kind of went hand in hand. And then I got to a stage where I was developing a bit of a fan voice, back when fans were starting to really have a voice, I guess.
And then how do you get inspiration? Because you are quite active on your blog and that, and you do cover quite a range of sports and that. Like, how do you start an article, kind of thing? Where do you find your inspiration to write? Because yeah, some people find it quite difficult to just write a article versus someone that's writing a number a week, kind of thing.
I guess be confident and highly opinionated. That's pretty much the combination you need to be. Look, Speaking of cricket World Cups, like obviously as Proteas fans, we've had many heartaches, and for me, like writing became quite a therapeutic thing, or actually, it was straight out therapy for the Proteas concerned.
Yes, you need that.
So, I'm a very curious person, and living in Johannesburg, I grew up in Cape Town. Now living up here, I've been very fortunate to meet some incredible people, and I've been exposed to all kinds of sporting people, from the actual superstars all the way through to kind of journalists, people behind the scenes that make things tick in teams, and I've been very fortunate in that respect. So I always believe there's amazing insights out there, and if you just think differently, you can always uncover something. And sports entertainment, ultimately, it's like any other thing. It's just like Game of Thrones, it's just like soap operas, all that kind of stuff. You get stars, you get villains, you get heroes, you get plots, you get locations, and sport to me, it's just always captured my imagination. So I've got a kind of wild imagination at that. So but most of my stuff was always humor based, because I always found sports so entertaining, and I just always flock to the sort of dark side and the humor, and trying to find things that are funny, even though sometimes it could offend people. So the inspiration was always there. I just thought there was always something to write about. There was always something to talk about. And I literally was that sort of stereotypical guy that if you saw me at a braai, you could talk to me for an hour about something. And I just like I'm not educated whatsoever. I think I've got a personal training diploma somewhere. Like basically in school, I played sports, and I got through barely. I didn't go to university. Nothing stuck in my mind. Not that I was dim or anything. I was never studious. So sport, though, I mean, it always stuck. I always knew what was going on. I understood what was going on across the codes, and with that, I had something to talk about, I guess.
And then speaking of school and sports and that, what kind of sports did you play while you were in like high school and that? Is that where your passion for like sports like began?
Yeah, well, look, I was the youngest of four kids, so to avoid getting beaten up often, I would have to be quite good at sports. So, rather than being beaten up by brothers, I would say let's rather play cricket or rugby. So, being tackled every day or being bowled and hit in the head with this taped up tennis ball was better than a fist, I guess. So I played everything from a young age. I love cricket. I love rugby. I went to one of the traditional boys' schools where literally sport came first, second, and third. Education was fourth, and if you were anyway culturally inclined, then you got a wedgie. So again, like just it was always around me. Then I started to play golf, and then that became my only sport. It really was, and I was pretty good at it. I was the first team captain. I made my provincial team, and then sort of by the age of 16, I discovered chicks and booze. So golf kind of went out the window. My last year, I played rugby again. By that stage, I obviously wasn't quite as developed as I could have been. So I captained the third team of Wynberg Boys High School. Very proud team. We were absolutely shite, but we played with a lot of heart. We didn't really have a coach, because our coach at the time was the first team cricket coach, and they were going to a tour of England. So he never wanted to get sick if it rained. So he was never around. So I was actually a player coach, and yeah, it was just so great to play school sports. And again, like the banter and the camaraderie and the friendships that you make from team sports. And again, it was just always talking about stuff. And yeah, I guess it's a very long answer, but yeah, I've played pretty much everything, and I've loved it all the time.
And yeah, speaking of golf, I do see that quite often come up on your Instagram or articles, or even on your morning sports that you do on Cliff Central. Golf is quite a cornerstone. Do you ever dream of becoming a professional, or have you?
Yeah, it's maybe that's one thing I regret in life. Yeah, look, the thing about being a professional is that you don't have a life. You tour, you're constantly on the road. It's very hard. It's very dedicated. But then I look at what I do, or what anybody does at any high level, and that's exactly what life is. So yeah, I think if I could take my youth back, I probably would have put my head down and tried harder in golf. It is a really cool sport, and you get to travel. I mean, in many ways, like I envy the guy who's like 75th in the world, because he's a multimillionaire. No one knows who the hell he is. He travels the world, and he could either be a very successful gigolo, or just well traveled man.
Ben, I think your mic has been muted.
Google Hangouts, not my favorite.
Okay,
Anyway,
there we go.
uh, sorry, I was just I was tangenting, and I was saying that like golf would have been so great, but no, it's such a tough game mentally as well. So I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have had the head for it. I think too much, but I do love the sport. And if I had lots more money, I would probably just do that. I'd only focus on golf because it's just so much more than the sport to me. I think it's travel. It's a lifestyle. My best friends play golf. People I admire most in this world play golf. It's just a really cool thing.
Yeah, and maybe trying to shift it a bit towards cricket. That's probably my true love when it comes to sport. And yeah, the Cricket World Cup is beginning, or this coming week, with obviously South Africa and England are taking place on Thursday, and the warm-up games are taking place already.
Hmm.
South Africa game got rained out today, but it seemed like they had a pretty good start, and then they beat Sri Lanka. I think it was on Friday or Thursday last week.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you have any initial thoughts on the team that we're taking? What are your hopes for the Proteas going into this one?
Well, I think I can finally say the Proteas are overwhelming favorites to win this one. I mean, if there was ever a team that was due anything, like the rain has screwed us every single time. We're now playing in the country of rain. There's just so much scar tissue. There's just so much hurt. There's just so much trauma. That if we don't win this, then the cricketing gods definitely have something against us, and we must do an exorcism. Like I think there's 4 or 5 teams that are really good, and you look at them on paper and you think that's amazing. But as we all know, in World Cups, it's about having a good day at the right time, and a bad day at the wrong time can obviously cost your entire thing. So I think we've definitely got a good enough team. And if I were to be, what's the word, esoteric or spiritual or whatever, I really think that on the basis of that alone, we should win this thing pretty easily.
Yeah, yeah, from well, my perspective, like the last World Cup, I really thought that was our strongest side we've ever taken to a World Cup in a while, and that was like our best chance. And then yeah, obviously things didn't work out in the end again. Yeah, probably getting beaten just by the better side. Yeah, I think New Zealand were really top of their game in that World Cup. But this year, I'm quite hopeful with so yeah, the youth that have come in, like the Quinton de Kock and Aidan Markram, and you've got Rodalba and Ngidi and that. So guys that really haven't been to a World Cup before, or kind of had that pressure of the C word hanging over them for a while. So
Yeah, I think also if you look at that team, I mean, you mentioned some key names there. Like these are different kinds of players that we've taken before. These are the guys who are, let's be honest, they're multimillionaires now. They've played IPL. They've done a variety of things that make them global superstars. Socially and professionally. I think these guys have lived a life. Whereas in the past, the Cricket World Cup used to be the pinnacle. It used to be the everything. And the reason why our guys choke so much is because it's like trying to ask like the hottest chick out when you're in high school. You put everything onto that, and then by the time it comes around, you're a bumbling mess, and you're stuttering, you're stammering, and you're sweating. Whereas if Quinton de Kock doesn't win this World Cup, I don't think he'll give 2 shits. He really won't. It won't hit home. If Rabada doesn't win this World Cup, he'll be like, oh well, I'm 24 and I'm the world's best bowler. So I think there's a lot of like a much better sort of mental space for a lot of this team. And obviously, it means a lot to Faf. He's one of the older guys. But otherwise, yeah, I think we've got a bunch of guys that are just going to go in there. They're going to roll the dice, and I feel quietly confident. I know every World Cup I've always been quite positive about this kind of stuff, but I don't even believe I can jinx the guys anymore. I just think we've got a really good mixture of players. And again, he's got bigger things to worry about. He's got this property development in the north coast of KZN. He's got family stuff to worry about. Like this won't bother the guys as much as previous times have. And I think with that happened, it'll be a really good thing for them.
yeah, I'm not as confident, so I'm really keeping my positivity under control at the moment, because I don't want more heartache. But we'll see
Yeah.
as the first couple games go.
Well, you got to toughen up there, Darren. That's the whole thing about life. If you're not throwing your heart out there, you're not living.
I guess so. That's quite true. But yeah, speaking of Hashim Amla, his form in the T20 series in South Africa before coming out to the UK was quite terrible. He didn't really amass any kind of form or runs in that. But since the last two warm-up games, he's both innings he scored over 50. It's too early to say that he's maybe in a bit of form, regained a bit of form.
I think with Hash, he's the kind of guy that just clicks. I know whenever people try to talk about form, they always resort to cliches because it's probably the most impossible thing to talk about because there's no science behind form. It isn't like, well, you must hit 37 cover drives and then you'll be in form. So I just think with him is that he knows he's got a lot of self-belief as Hash. Look at his career. People obviously, laughed about the fact that he had this strange style and he was all over the place at the crease and he wasn't still enough. He was on the move, then there was the whole, like, that guy's got self-belief. He's got a lot of self-belief and he's got a lot of sort of like strength that I think a lot of players can never ever have, no matter their experience or temperament. So he just needs to know that he can put bat and ball in that Proteas jersey. And I reckon with him, it'll happen a lot quicker than someone who's more of a technical player.
And what are some of the other players like that you are looking forward to watching? Like, who do you think is going to be a standout performer for the side?
Well, as we mentioned, Quinton de Kock, I think he's one of those generational players in that he is so special, and he's quite difficult to bowl to because he doesn't he's got balls. He's a guy who will try hit a six over the slips, or he'll use his feet to the spinners, and he's not scared of that new ball. So I think he's obviously special. I think Rassie van der Dussen, when I started watching him at the Mzansi Super League, I felt there was something quite special there. And the fact that he's not exactly young, he's gone through the journeyman days. He's suddenly got this big chance. He just seems like a big player to me. He really does. So you got players like that. There's Fuff's Fuff. It doesn't have AB around. There's no shadow for him anymore. He is exceptional. David Miller's a big concern for me. I think now that they've given him the backup keeping role also hasn't helped. But there's a guy, again, like, it's just there's so much talent there. JP Duminy is another guy that I'm actually quite excited to see play. There's a guy who's taken a lot of shit from fans. People say that he's over it and he's a token player because he scored 166 at a test match in Melbourne 35 years ago, that he's in the Proteas for life. And look, I've been one of those guys who have given him a bit of shit online. But he's again, he's come back. He's shown what he's made of. I think there's some real quality there. In the bowlers, I think our bowling attack is great. We look at the variety. I don't think on merit Steyn fully fit. Genuinely believe that Steyn won't get a game. I think Ngidi's something special if he can stay fit. Rabada's Rabada. With Tahir, we generally have probably the best limited overs spinner. I've been saying it for years. I think I've been saying it since he was still not even a South African. It's exciting. One player that I was getting quite excited about a year ago in these conditions was Adile Petlakwayo. Now, again, there's a guy who can probably go 6-7 runs and over out of nowhere, but the dude's, so he doesn't get a lot of credit for. I think he's a fantastic thinking bowler. I think he's always thinking about stuff. Sometimes he might try a little bit too much, or he might go a bit missing mentally in the games that don't mean as much. But we've seen, even with bat in hand, the guy's got also the big game sort of like desire, the big game want. You must understand as well that cricket seasons are hugely long. I mean, no matter what we do in life, if we do it over and over and over, we're going to have patches that are difficult. I think with the guys where they are now, you get through the anxiety of getting picked. You're in a position where you know what you can do. And I think Petlakwayo on these pitches, we saw it against Sri Lanka when he bowled so well. He's going to be a great link man, I think, in this middle overs. I think as the guy as well, where he is in his career, he knows that a big performance here can really set him up to be a proper international player. So yeah, I mean, those are just really top of mind, top of head kind of thoughts. So I think there's a lot to be excited about.
And you just mentioned our bowling attack, and I saw an article today by Ian Chappell, and he said the best bowling or the bowling attack is going to win it for win the World Cup, basically. And he only mentioned England, Australia, and India as the three best balanced attacks when it comes to bowling. I was quite shocked not to see South Africa there because, I think we're probably also can be thrown in the hat with those kind of teams.
Yeah, but you've answered your own question there. I mean, Ian Chappell wrote it. Of course, he's going to mention those teams. I mean, it's look, it's okay for someone like that to make those comments because he's expected to do so, being part of the IC3. That's what those guys are all about. So look after your mates and let the other guys fight for the scraps. No, I really think that no matter who you are, you've got to look at the balance of the South African attack. Like that Ngidi Rabada opening bowling partnership. Also a lot of guys haven't seen Ngidi. Especially in this sort of format, they haven't played against him, but he's a dude that's just so strong and so together. Again, I say this while always touching wood because of his sorry, that sounded horrendous. I say this with obviously like with a bit of anxiety because the guy will drop down with injuries. So I hope not. Yeah, I just think our bowling attack's pretty good, and that Dubney's going to have like 4 overs here or there where he'll do all right. I don't know. I sound like a one-eyed South African fan here, and I sound like a fanboy talking over and over. But this is years of experience that got me to this point of being this confident.
Yes, I think I think every Protea fan, when the World Cup rolls around and the heartache and that from the last World Cup has worn off, we kind of rejuvenated, and we think back to history and think that it can't be that bad again, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we shall remain positive. And yeah, I think as well with the pitches here in England, they probably do suit our seam attack, which is quite great. And I don't think the pitches will suit many of the subcontinent bowling lineups, which is kind of good for us.
Yeah, I think England are going to be mindful of that as well. But I still don't know really what to make of this English team. I know they're the favourites and they've got amazing kits and they've all got amazing hairstyles and like they're all just amazing. But I still don't know what to make of the temperament and if they really can contain a team with the ball. Sure, they've got amazing batsmen. They can score 7,000 runs. And you hear all these different things about if a team can score 500, it'll be England. Yeah, sure. Like take them to some small shitty English ground with a flat track against Sri Lanka. And I'm sure they could. But it's in the big games of which this format is giving us loads of those. I think with the ball they may struggle.
And yeah, they've had 6 major injuries just in the last week with Owen
That
Morgan's
too.
finger was dislocated, I think.
Yeah.
Mark Wood was ankle, Joshua
Yeah.
Archer as well. So they've got a few of their key players already injured, especially in their bowling attack, which I don't think they can afford to lose too many players in that department.
Yeah,
Uh,
and as much as cricket is an individual game played in a team setting, like these bowlers need to know how they bowl in unison, like how they bowl as a unit in certain situations. And I think if you're going to be chopping and changing or bringing in new talent, again, it goes into the stressful games where suddenly you're going at 8 and over for a few overs. You're trying to get back to basics, but you don't entirely know what those basics are at this level.
and yeah, the Sandpaper Twins are back with Steve Smith and David Warner. And yeah, Australia seem to have turned a leaf since they came back on the side, actually performing. Do you think they are a threat for the World Cup?
Uh, sure. They're going to have decent crowds as well because most Australians go there, they get drunk, they knock a woman up, and they stay there for ages. But yeah, I mean, look, they're always a good side in World Cups. They've just been able to do that. I think they surprised many people by beating India. They run into this World Cup's been pretty good, and unlike England, they haven't played that much. So they can massage some players back in there. Warner and Smith, of course, they can come back and they've been able to mentally prepare for the last year. So there's definitely some benefits in that. Yeah, look, it's annoying how Australia are always contenders. I would really love them to go through a low. There have been some lows, but no, I would still say that they're going to be there in the semis.
Yeah, they played a warm up game, Australia versus England over the weekend here in my local city of Southampton. And Steve Smith got resounding boos walking out and after he scored a century as well.
Good.
Um,
I'm all
so
for it.
yeah, and he kind of just after he had after the innings interview and that he kind of just said he was kind of prepared for it and he kind of just taking it in a stride, smiling away. But yeah, it's I think he's just gonna both of him and David Warner are in for quite a lot of booing and hatred from crowds this World Cup. Um, what are there any other teams do you think that we should be looking at, be mindful of, that might be like a bit of a dark horse?
Yeah, the dark horse thing is always quite difficult. Like, firstly, this is definitely the best format for the World Cup. I know you get those cricketing hipsters will say, well, what about Ireland and what about Nepal and what about South Burundi? I don't care for that. The ICC needs to get a better log system together, a better structure together where teams can build into it. But when it comes to World Cup, I think we all want to see the best 10. We want to see the round robin, and we want to see that happen the way it is happening this time around. When it comes to dark horses, I think Afghanistan are going to be entertaining to watch. I think they might get pretty good about 2 wins. Pakistan is, yeah, again, like you always know they're going to be that dark horse. They used to be like what the French used to be in rugby, but they are looking a bit flat. I think they've had a lot of cricket coming into this. New Zealand is like New Zealand or New Zealand. That's just what they do. They are the dark horses. You know, they wear black. Uh, they're going to be the dark horse again and again. They beat India this last, yeah, they beat India this last weekend. I think again they've got some nice variety. Yeah, maybe some of the stars are a bit long in the tooth, but you know if Trent Bolt can do what he did the other day, like that's a guy who can quickly get 3 wickets with the new ball. Yeah, he runs in there looking like he's just played World of Warcraft for the last 12 years inside with no social interaction whatsoever. But the guy is a proper cricketer. I think he's hugely exciting. Yeah, so I would say they'd be my dark horses. I don't see the West Indies being the dark horses that people want them to be. That's always the romantic figure of any World Cup. And yeah, Sri Lanka look like a pile of shite. They just aren't recouping. They aren't regenerating their top talents. So I wouldn't expect too much from them.
I'm fortunate enough to be going to see South Africa play versus the West Indies.
Nice.
So I'm hoping the West Indies aren't just a rollover side, and yeah, there is some competitive game there. Um, and then looking, yeah, obviously the World Cup has changed its format for this one. What do you think of the format now, where basically everyone plays everyone, and just the top four then make it to the semis?
Well, sports about big stakes, right? When there's no stakes, nobody cares. Like that last World Cup that was in the West Indies, or the last couple that like they've just been so long. It's like been on and on and on. As it is, this World Cup starts 30th of May, ends 14th of July. You tell someone who doesn't know the game too well, they're going to be like, "Why the hell is it so long? Like, can't they make it shorter?" But I think this is a good format in that I think everything is look. To get to the final, to get the semi-finals, you've probably got to win 6 games to be safe, right? So there's no real chance for you to have a mess around and we've slipped one here, so don't worry about it. No, like everything means something. And I think when you have the 10 teams the way it is now, you can still have a team like Afghanistan coming through. Bangladesh will always just be there by the fact that there's not too many other top teams. But this is perfect. And with it being, see, the thing about groups is that like when you play in a group, like from the beginning, some teams could be favored. I think where it is now, it really is. There's no excuses. Everyone knows the challenge ahead of them, and I think for a fan's perspective, it is just so cool to know that you've got all those matches. There's no stupid Super Six or whatever interim knockout something or other before we get into a final or a semi-final. So it's pretty simple. I think it's going to be hugely impactful, and the stakes are going to be high with every game.
Yeah, it seems like it's gone down well with the fans and that. With I think they said they had over 3 million people apply for tickets,
Great.
and yeah, obviously most matches are sold out, and yeah, tickets weren't cheap for some of them. I know the South Africa versus India game in Southampton. I think the starting price for bronze tickets was about £50, going up to about £120, and that was sold out within, I think, a few minutes of it then being released. So there's definitely a huge pull. And one of the things I was, yeah, looking at that was in South Africa as well. I think like with, I saw in the recent T20 tournament that was held, the provincial one, the crowds were quite dismal for most games that I saw some highlights in that of. And yeah, what do you, it's quite a difficult one, but like, what do you think can be changed through CSA to try get more people watching cricket? Because you would think, especially with T20 cricket, that's the most digestible form of cricket for people, the everyday person. And if that isn't receiving large crowds and that, yeah, what hope does the longer format of the game have?
Yeah, I think look here in South Africa, there's a general problem with live interactions, live audiences, and attendances. It's across all sports really. I think it's a very tough time economically. I think people don't. There's just too many options. You're not getting a next generation that's coming through. Kids are gravitating towards esports and staying indoors nowadays more than going out and playing sports. And I think sports becoming quite elitist as well in certain areas. So whether kids want to take that, like, if your kid doesn't want to play sports, you're not going to go to the sport because there's a very small chance that happening. Like I think this is a separate podcast in itself, which will take about 7 hours. I'm fascinated by this, and I'm quite dedicated to actually coming up with some proper solutions towards this. Been having some interesting conversations over in the rugby side of things as well as the cricket. I think it's a very complex matter. I promise I'm not waffling through this answer, but I
No,
think it's just that there's just way too many options out there as far as what we do with our spare time and our spare money towards these things. I think cricket in particular needs to be packaged better. I think the Proteas do a fantastic job with it. And I think the Mzansi Super League has tremendous potential. This first season, unfortunately, people were just bad mouthing it because South Africans are just very negative and very cynical towards things because they feel that that's a thing to be in life for some strange reason. But I think the Mzansi Super League is something that we can use to turn things around. Look, that T20 Cup, unfortunately, no one's ever going to give a toss about it because it's at the end of cricket season. Rugby season has now started. You really are behind, so behind in the queue, and that's another reality. Like as simple as that. Like there's only so many eyeballs. There's only so many opportunities to get something done. Game of Thrones is kind of on. There's all kinds of other things that you want to watch and spend your time with. Like it's good. It's summer. You can go play golf still. You can go to the beach. You can do other things. To go watch a T20 Cup with no sponsor, that's always a hard sell. So I would rather put my focus on let's make the Mzansi Super League amazing. Let's try things out in that, and let's package it properly, which I think they're already starting to do. Again, this has nothing to do with the fact that I did do some work for Mzansi Super League, and I've been very open about that. But I'm excited about that because cities have teams again. And I think the same could be done for rugby. We need to stop this old provincial tribal crap and we need to market to the cities and get everyone in the city involved in what makes them proud of a place. Provinces mean nothing. They generally mean absolute squat. Like I couldn't care if I live in Gauteng, Limpopo, Northwest, or like I don't know, Swaziland. I mean, okay, a different country, but cities are important things. Cities are sexier things, and cities are things you can galvanize people around.
yeah, I think
Terrible answer, but ultimately, it's a lot to do. It's a long game. This it really is.
yeah,
If you look what Americans have done with their sports, they've made a way in true American style to just package it, and it's just we have to go that way. I used to be a bit of a purist, and I used to hate the way Americans do things, and we should always fight it. But that's how we compete in the world of entertainment, because the world of sports, it isn't an island, unfortunately. It's part of everything else.
yeah, I think as well. Yeah, you mentioned rugby. If you look at the Super Rugby attendances of recent this season, especially in the South Africa terms, they haven't been great. So, like you say, there's a need for repackaging it and selling it to the public in a better format, in a better way. One of the ideas I like or is maybe taking some of these games out to more, I want to say, rural places. Obviously, dependent on like Super Rugby games, or where there's provincial cricket maybe is probably a better example, where you can take games out to smaller grounds where there's a large quantity of people that can go and watch it more readily than, yeah, if you take the example from where I'm from, KwaZulu-Natal, if you want to go watch cricket of any provincial cricket, you've got to go down to Durban, and for someone that's in, say, Escort, which is in the middle of KwaZulu-Natal, you've got to travel 3-4 hours to get to Durban, kind of thing, and it's just not feasible. So why not take the cricket to the people, kind of thing, or to have
I totally agree.
more games in Pietermaritzburg or whatever, kind of thing.
I totally agree. It's just unfortunately the business side of things, like that
Yeah.
doesn't do anything for suite holders in the big stadiums. It doesn't do anything for the vendors who have pledged to have a store there, and then suddenly you want to take games elsewhere. So this is the big problem with, again, it's just traditionally how things have been structured in this country, is that it's a big country and there's big supporting areas in these provinces. If you go back to the whole city kind of thing, you got one stadium, you got one place, like English rugby, they play at Twickenham, that's it. If there's a big game, there's a sellouts. That's it. They don't have to worry about going anywhere else. I would love to see, especially in rugby, like the Bulls playing, capitalizing more on what they did when they played at the Orlando Stadium that one year. They haven't gone back since, really. Why is that? Well, because if you are Loftus and you've branded that stadium, and there's a whole bunch of other things in the business world that just aren't sensible to take the game anywhere else. So there's just some real world economics that will always stop things like that happening, despite the fact that is such a great idea. And I think people would love it. So it would really do something for those teams.
Well, hopefully there are some people like yourself thinking of these things up there in the different CSAs and Sands-on, whatever, and that, because there definitely has to be some form of change soon.
Yeah, well, look, from my conversation, I can tell you this much. There are a lot of people trying to do really good things in the organizations that we maybe give a hard time to, but their hands are tied with a lot of kind of, just some inner workings of how it works as a business. So I think, like there are some really great people out there trying their hardest to make small things happen. And they are looking to innovate across the board, but it's just so damn difficult. So then, you bring in the whole broadcasting picture. What happens with the broadcasters? These guys, they spend so much money. Obviously, they want control of certain things, as any other business would. So there's so many different role players that want to try to change things, but there's also the role players saying, well, I'm kind of got to get what I've paid for. So no, I don't want to do that. It's hugely difficult. And yeah, like I said, it's a very different podcast, that.
Yeah, it is quite a difficult topic to get around. And maybe then an ending, maybe putting you on the knife board here with who do you think is going to win the Cricket World Cup?
I told you, South Africa's got this.
Okay,
Cock or block? No, they got this. They really do, and it's going to surprise. It's going to surprise them, but they're just going to be like, yeah, okay, well, not really.
Okay, well, I'll be happy with that. I guess we'll find out in the next month and a half whether or not that comes true. I hope it does. And then maybe where can people find you, Ben? I know you've got your own YouTube channel on that.
Yeah, please go to my YouTube channel. I put so much damn effort into those videos. It's so on YouTube at Follow the Bounce. I haven't made too many videos recently because I've been very busy with some work stuff, but there is a video coming soon about my trip to Ghana recently, which was very interesting. Otherwise, on Twitter at Follow the Bounce, I'm pretty most frequent on that. Instagram, The Bounce, and then listen to cliffcentral.com. I'm going forward probably doing 2 shows a week there now. Monday mornings and Friday mornings you can listen live from 6 a.m. Otherwise, just catch the podcast, which I generally tweet out anyway. Yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thanks for coming on tonight. I really appreciate your sports insights.
Well, thanks for having me.
Cheers. Catch you.
Cool, man. Ciao.